Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt that sudden, unsettling jolt when something you relied on, something fundamental to your routine or happiness, just vanished? Or perhaps you've stubbornly clung to a way of doing things, a belief, or even a relationship long after it stopped serving you, only to realize it was holding you back from something far better. That feeling of the ground shifting, leaving you disoriented and asking, what just happened here?
It's a remarkably common human experience, isn't it? What's often overlooked is how frequently we attribute these challenges solely to external forces, when the most potent key to navigating them, to truly thriving through upheaval, lies firmly within our own perspective and our willingness to adapt. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a deceptively simple book that, despite its brevity, has offered profound truths and immediately actionable insights to millions, fundamentally reshaping how they experience and respond to change.
Absolutely. The source material for our deep dive today is Dr. Spencer Johnson's incredibly impactful book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's one of those rare reads that you can pick up, digest in less than an hour, yet its core insights possess the power to genuinely last a lifetime, transforming how you approach shifts in your professional life, your personal relationships, and every aspect in between.
At its heart, Who Moved My Cheese is built upon a simple yet profoundly resonant metaphor, which will unravel throughout our conversation. The cheese isn't merely dairy. It symbolizes what each of us desires in life. This could be anything from a fulfilling career, a loving relationship, financial security, vibrant health, or even a deep sense of inner peace. It's unique to each individual. And the maze is the dynamic environment where we actively seek these things. It could be the organization you work within, the complex dynamics of your family, or the broader community and society in which you live. Our mission today is to go far beyond a mere retelling of the story. We're going to peel back the layers, truly unpacking how this seemingly simple parable reveals fundamental truths about how we as individuals and as groups interact with, resist, and ultimately adapt to change.
So, our mission for you, our listener, is crystal clear. We are going to distill the most vital nuggets of knowledge from this compelling narrative. Our aim is to provide you with a true shortcut to being exceptionally well informed about how to not just react to change, but to actively anticipate it, to adapt with remarkable speed when it inevitably arrives, and perhaps most crucially, to cultivate the agility to change quickly, again and again, as life demands. We want to spark those genuine aha moments, the kind that make knowledge truly stick and feel immediately useful for you, whether you're contemplating a significant career pivot, navigating shifts in your personal circumstances, or simply striving to manage the continuous flux of modern life.
Precisely. This deep dive is designed to illuminate the often hidden secrets to dealing with change. By the end of our conversation, you should feel equipped to suffer less stress and, critically, enjoy more success, whether that manifests in your professional trajectory, the health and vibrancy of your personal relationships, or your ongoing journey of personal growth and self-discovery. Our intense focus today will be on the direct, practical applications, the tangible how-to strategies that are derived directly from the narrative and the rich tapestry of its various interpretations.
Okay, part 1. The genesis of a global phenomenon, why this simple story matters. Here's where it gets truly fascinating, because this isn't just a charming fictional tale that Dr. Johnson conjured out of thin air. Who Moved My Cheese was, in fact, born from a very real, intensely personal struggle that Dr. Johnson himself was navigating with change. He discovered the profound power of these concepts firsthand, using the very ideas he would later publish to gain a much-needed perspective and, critically, inject some humor into what was, for him, a difficult and uncertain period in his own life. It wasn't just an abstract theory, it was a deeply personal lifeline he built.
That's such an important origin story, isn't it? If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound truth. The most resonant, universally applicable wisdom often emerges directly from personal experience, from facing and overcoming genuine challenges. Dr. Johnson's journey with his cheese story actually began long before it was a book. He shared it casually with friends and colleagues. What happened next was telling. His friends started noticing remarkable improvements in his life, his demeanor, his ability to cope. Naturally, they asked him why. When he revealed his simple story, it resonated deeply. Over subsequent years, many of these same friends reported that simply hearing this parable helped them maintain their sense of humor, actively embrace changes they faced, and ultimately gain something even better for themselves. It was only much later, at the urging of Ken Blanchard, his co-author on The 1-Minute Manager, that Dr. Johnson finally decided to publish it, sharing its powerful, distilled insights with a far wider audience.
And the real-world impact, even before its wide publication, became undeniable. A classic example, drawn straight from the book's introduction, is the story of Charlie Jones, the renowned NBC TV broadcaster. He had invested immense effort and delivered an outstanding performance broadcasting track and field events at an earlier Olympic Games. So you can almost feel his surprise, his deep frustration, when his boss informed him he was being pulled from these showcase events for the next Olympics and reassigned to swimming and diving. He wasn't as familiar with these new sports, so he felt a potent mix of unappreciation, anger, and a sense of unfairness. That anger, the narrative explains, began to bleed into every aspect of his professional life.
This immediately prompts an important question. How many of us, when faced with an unexpected professional shift, our established role, our area of expertise, our hard-earned comfort zone suddenly moved, react with that very same initial wave of anger, that deep-seated sense of injustice or unfairness? Charlie Jones, after hearing the cheese story, had a moment of profound self-reflection. He actually laughed at himself, which is an incredibly powerful first step towards adaptability. He recognized that his boss had simply moved his cheese. And rather than continuing to resist and stew in resentment, he consciously decided to change his attitude. He actively put in the effort to learn the two new sports, embracing the challenge. And in that very process of engaging with something new, of pushing past his comfort zone, he found it actually made him feel young and re-energized. It wasn't long before his boss noticed this newfound positive attitude and renewed energy, and Charlie began receiving even better, more fulfilling assignments. He went on to enjoy greater success than ever before, ultimately being inducted into Pro Football's Hall of Fame Broadcasters Alley. His story powerfully demonstrates the immediate, transformative power that simply changing one's internal attitude and embracing new challenges can have. It's not about the change to him, but the change in him.
And this impact wasn't just individual, it resonated on an organizational level, too. Ken Blanchard himself was such a strong believer in the story's utility that, even before its official publication, he shared an early edition with over 200 employees in his own company, the Ken Blanchard Companies.
His reasoning was astute and deeply practical. He understood that in today's fiercely competitive landscape, any successful company needs truly flexible people, individuals who are agile and open to new approaches. They simply cannot afford employees who stubbornly cling to the way things are done around here, out of habit or fear. He observed that living in this constant white water of change, whether it's within a demanding workplace or the unpredictable currents of personal life, can become incredibly stressful unless people possess a mental framework, a way of looking at change that helps them understand and process it. The cheese story provided precisely that framework. When he introduced the story and employees read, "Who moves my cheese?" there was an almost palpable release of negative energy within the organization. Person after person, from various departments, expressed profound gratitude, sharing how helpful it had been in allowing them to see the ongoing changes in their company in a completely different light. It shifted their collective perspective from dread and resistance to one of understanding and proactive engagement. This truly underscores the story's utility not just as an individual self-help tool, but as a powerful catalyst for organizational transformation, fostering a much-needed culture of adaptability.
The book's reach, once published, became truly phenomenal. It ascended to Amazon's all-time #1 best-selling book, selling over 21 million copies and translated into 26 languages. It found its way into countless homes, schools, businesses of all sizes, and even various branches of the military. Its universal appeal is, frankly, undeniable.
Yet, despite its widespread adoration, it certainly faced its share of critics. Some dismissed it as too simple, obvious common sense, even going so far as to argue that it insulted their intelligence because they gleaned nothing from it. Some critics, perhaps misinterpreting its core message, even feared to suggest that all change is inherently good, or that people should mindlessly conform to unnecessary changes imposed by others, even though that particular interpretation isn't actually found within the story itself. This dynamic raises a fascinating question about how we, as humans, perceive simplicity versus profound truth, and how our pre-existing biases can color our reception of new ideas. Dr. Johnson himself commented on this, noting that both the fans who loved it and the critics who scorned it were, in their own way, right. His key insight, and one we want to emphasize for you today, is that the true value of the book doesn't come inherently from the story itself, but from how you interpret its lessons and how diligently you apply them to your own unique situation. This personal application is precisely our unwavering focus for you, because that's where its insights transform into actionable wisdom.
Okay, let's move into part 2. The characters in the comfort zone setting the stage for change. Now, let's step directly into the maze and meet the 4 captivating characters who populate it. We have 2 simple mice, Sniff and Sperry, and then 2 little people, Hem and Haw.
What's immediately striking is that these characters aren't just arbitrary creations in a children's tale. They are meticulously crafted to represent distinct facets, different parts of ourselves. Sniff is that intuitive part of us that sniffs out change early, possessing an almost preternatural keenness for subtle shifts in the environment. And Scurry is the character who scurries into action without hesitation once that change is perceived, embodying a swift, unburdened response. They represent our more primitive, instinctual side, our gut reactions, our basic, unadorned ability to perceive a threat or opportunity and respond without overthinking. They are pure, uncomplicated action.
And then we have the little people, Hem and Haw. Hem is the one who consistently denies and resists change, often paralyzed by a deep-seated fear that any alteration will inevitably lead to something worse, that the unknown will be far more detrimental than the current discomfort, however uncomfortable that discomfort might actually be. In stark contrast, Haw is a character who learns to adapt in time, especially when he finally sees, often through the painful crucible of personal experience, that changing can, in fact, lead to something demonstrably better. They represent our more complex human brains, those intricate psychological landscapes filled with a myriad of beliefs, emotions, rationalizations, and cognitive biases that can either powerfully aid or profoundly hinder our adaptability.
This dynamic immediately raises a crucial question for you, our listener. As we talk through their journeys, which of these characters do you tend to identify with most strongly when first confronted with change? Do you find yourself being a Sniff, quick to notice shifts, a Scurry, readily jumping into action, a Hem, digging in your heels, resisting fiercely, perhaps even blaming, or a Haw, someone who actually struggles with denial and fear, but ultimately learns to adapt and move forward? Understanding these various parts within ourselves, acknowledging our initial instinctive reactions, is truly the first crucial step towards navigating the maze more effectively and moving forward with purpose rather than paralysis.
All 4 characters spend their days in the maze, which is vividly described as a perplexing labyrinth of corridors and chambers. Some of these chambers, tantalizingly, contain delicious cheese, their desired goals, their sources of comfort, their sense of fulfillment, while others, less inviting, lead to dark corners and frustrating blind alleys. Regardless of their individual natures or their sophisticated methods, each character relentlessly searches for their own unique kind of cheese, their own personal definition of happiness and success.
The mice, Sniff and Scurry, leveraging their simple brains and razor-sharp instincts, employed a straightforward, highly efficient trial-and-error method. They'd race down one corridor, and if it proved empty, they'd immediately pivot, without dwelling on the disappointment, and sprint down another. They possessed an inherent, remarkable ability to remember the corridors that held no cheese, quickly moving into new, unexplored areas. Sniff would use his keen nose to smell out the general direction of the cheese, and Scurry would then race ahead, embodying their highly adaptable and remarkably quick nature. They got lost, of course, and sometimes bumped into walls, but their defining characteristic was that they always kept moving. There was no emotional baggage slowing them down.
The little people, Hem and Haw, with their more complex brains, approached the maze with a different strategy. They attempted to develop more sophisticated analytical methods of finding cheese, applying reasoned thought, drawing on past experiences, and formulating intricate plans. While sometimes successful, their powerful human beliefs, their deeply ingrained emotions, and their often unexamined assumptions frequently took over, clouding their judgment and, ironically, making life in the maze far more complicated and challenging than it needed to be. Their intelligence, paradoxically, could become a hindrance.
Regardless of their distinct approaches and inherent differences, all 4 characters eventually discovered what they were looking for. They each found their own kind of cheese, one auspicious day at the end of a long corridor, in what was an abundant and seemingly permanent location, Cheese Station C. This moment is a powerful allegory for a common human experience. We find something that brings us happiness, a sense of security, or a feeling of fulfillment, and we naturally settle into that comfort zone. It's a universal moment of perceived success.
And this is precisely where it gets really interesting, because this is where human nature, and specifically the arrogance of success, begins to reveal itself. Once they found cheese station C and it was overflowing with delicious cheese, the mice, Sniff and Scurry, continued their vigilant daily routine without missing a beat. They arrived early each morning, meticulously inspecting the area for any subtle changes from the day before. And critically, they kept their running shoes handy, tied around their necks, ready to put on at a moment's notice. They remained proactive, remained vigilant, never taking their abundance for granted.
Their actions, or rather lack of changing their actions despite the comfort, are key. Haw and Hem, however, adopted a fundamentally different routine. Their comfort bred complacency. They started waking later each day, dressing slower, and casually strolling to Cheese Station C. They had grown deeply complacent, operating under the explicit, unexamined assumption that the cheese would always be there, in an endless unearned supply. They even went so far as to move their homes closer to the station, literally building their social lives and sense of identity around this seemingly permanent source of abundance. They hung up their jogging suits, exchanged their running shoes for comfortable slippers, and became, in essence, incredibly dangerously comfortable.
Dem famously and quite tellingly declared, "There's enough cheese here to last us forever." They felt happy, successful, and truly believed they were now absolutely irrevocably secure. They even decorate the walls with affirming sayings like, "Having cheese makes you happy," reinforcing their belief in the permanence of their comfort and, inadvertently, the illusion of control. It was a textbook case of success breeding not just comfort, but a profound, almost blinding complacency.
This narrative pivot raises a profoundly important question for you, our listener. Where in your own life have you perhaps experienced this arrogance of success, where a period of comfort, achievement, or stability inadvertently led to a dangerous sense of complacency? This is a critical practical application of the story's early lessons. When things are going well, when you're in your cheese station C, are you still actively smelling the cheese for subtle changes, meticulously inspecting your situation for potential shifts, for the first faint hints of mold or dwindling supply? Or are you, like Hem and Haw, growing too comfortable, too insular to notice the early warnings? Ignoring these quiet signals can lead to a far more jarring and painful rude awakening down the line. It's the difference between proactive adjustment and reactive crisis.
Okay, part 3. The jolt of change, different reactions, different outcomes. One crisp morning, the inevitable happened, as it always does in life. Sniff and Scurry arrived at Cheese Station C and found it utterly, undeniably empty. No cheese, just barren walls.
What's crucial to understand about the mice is that they weren't surprised. This is the payoff for their consistent vigilance. They had been proactively smelling the cheese and had noticed the supply getting smaller each day, so they were mentally and physically prepared for the inevitable disappearance. Their reaction was remarkably simple, direct, and instinctively efficient. Without a moment's hesitation or a single word of complaint, they immediately put on their running shoes and took off into the maze, propelled by instinct in search of new cheese. There's no overanalysis, no emotional paralysis, just pure, immediate, purposeful action. They moved.
Later that same day, Hem and Haw arrived at Cheese Station C. They, of course, hadn't paid any attention to the gradual daily changes that had been occurring. They had taken the cheese for granted, assuming its perpetual presence, and were therefore utterly unprepared for the shocking discovery. The contrast couldn't be starker.
Him, true to his character, immediately reacted with intense anger, outright denial, and a profound sense of victimhood, yelling, "What? No cheese! Who moved my cheese? It's not fair." Haw, in a state of utter shock, simply shook his head in disbelief, unable to process the magnitude of what was happening. This vividly highlights the profound emotional toll that unexpected and unprepared for change can inflict when we've allowed ourselves to become complacent and, crucially, to feel entitled to our comfort. Their powerful emotions, anger, denial, shock, completely clouded their ability to think rationally or act constructively.
For Hem and Haw, finding cheese meant far more than just sustenance. It was intrinsically linked to their very happiness, their established identity, and their fundamental sense of security. Its sudden, inexplicable loss was not just an inconvenience. It was a traumatic upheaval, shaking the very foundation of their perceived stability and sense of self.
What's truly fascinating here, and deeply relatable, is how their complex brains and overwhelming emotions completely took over, leading to a profound paralysis. They spent a considerable, indeed debilitating amount of time trying to decide what to do, endlessly hemming and hawing, consumed by inaction. They complained incessantly, raged at the perceived injustice of it all, and continually blamed external forces, and anonymous they, for their predicament. This is classic human behavior when faced with loss. The search for a culprit. Haw, in a moment of frustrated self-reflection, even etched a powerful yet profoundly self-limiting truth onto the wall. The more important your cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it. This is a crucial insight into the psychological and emotional reasons why we often resist change so vehemently. It's not just about the tangible loss of a job or a resource, but about the deeply ingrained emotional attachment to what was, to the status quo and the fear of the unknown.
They demonstrated this deep-seated paralysis by returning day after day with a kind of desperate, almost irrational stubbornness to the empty cheese station C, stubbornly hoping that their old cheese would miraculously reappear. Hemmen, in particular, repeatedly demanded, "Why did they do this to me?" He was utterly consumed by a deeply ingrained belief that they were somehow entitled to their cheese, that it was their right to have it perpetually provided and maintained for them.
This dynamic raises an incredibly important question for you, our listener. When facing a significant loss, a perceived injustice, or unexpected change, do you ever find yourself demanding fairness or perhaps feeling entitled to what was, even if it's no longer viable or even healthy? This belief system, while entirely understandable from a raw emotional perspective, it's a very human reaction to loss aversion, can dangerously immobilize us. It traps us in the past. Hem and Haw even tried working harder at the empty station, absurdly chiseling a hole in the wall, mistaking unproductive, futile activity for meaningful progress. They learned a harsh truth. Simply sitting there and seeing what happens, or fruitlessly attempting to resurrect what is gone, doesn't bring back old cheese. It simply leads to more hunger, more frustration, and deeper despair. This is a critical lesson in distinguishing between activity and productivity.
Right. Let's turn to part 4. Haw's transformation lessons from the maze. As they both grew progressively weaker and more discouraged, both physically from hunger and mentally from despair, Haw finally had a profound aha moment. He looked at himself in Hedgem, and in a remarkable act of self-awareness, he started to laugh at their collective folly. He realized, with sudden, painful clarity, that they were doing the same things over and over again and wondering why things don't get better. He saw the profound foolishness of his own fear and the sheer absurdity of their prolonged inaction.
This is an incredibly powerful practical application that we can all learn from and cultivate. Genuine self-awareness, leading to the humbling but ultimately liberating ability to laugh at your own absurd folly or stubbornness, is often the very first, most critical step towards truly letting go of the past and moving on. It's the moment you step outside yourself and gain perspective. Haw's breakthrough was prompted by a simple yet profound question he posed to himself. Where am I more likely to find cheese? Here in the empty, comfortable but stagnant station, or in the maze, the uncertain but potentially rewarding unknown? This powerful question fundamentally shifted his focus from lamenting the past to actively considering future possibilities. It shifted him from victim to agent.
Despite Hem's persistent arguments, which were riddled with fear, what if there is no cheese out there? What if it's worse? Haw gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and made a momentous, almost heroic internal shift. He then consciously painted a vivid, detailed picture in his mind of finding and enjoying new, delicious cheeses. This mental image, this act of visualization, was incredibly powerful. It made him feel good, confident, and profoundly motivated, forming a stark and compelling contrast with the despair of his present situation. He realized the power of imagining a better future.
This powerful use of visualization immediately raises an important question for you. How often do you consciously employ visualization as a strategic tool to overcome fear and actively motivate yourself to take action towards your goals? Haw's powerful realization that imagining myself enjoying new cheese before I find it leads me to it is a profoundly effective practical tool for application in virtually any life change, from career transitions to personal health goals. He understood that by releasing the mental grip of fear, that paralyzing what if, he felt an immediate, invigorating sense of freedom. As he bravely began to move forward, he explicitly etched this truth onto the wall for himself and for him. When you let go of your fear, you feel free, signifying a palpable shift from paralysis to liberation. It's an insight into the profound connection between mindset and mobility.
Haw bravely ventured into the maze, embarking on what he knew would be a difficult and uncertain journey. Initially, he was consumed by fear, physically weak from prolonged hunger, and profoundly disoriented by the unfamiliar corridors and the sheer vastness of the unknown. He quickly realized, with a pang of regret, that he should have moved much, much sooner. The thought, better late than never, was a small comfort, but he acutely felt the consequences of his delay, the wasted time, the prolonged suffering.
His journey was certainly not easy, and the narrative doesn't sugarcoat it. It was a challenging path of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There were wrong turns, moments of doubt, and periods of exhaustion. Yet critically, he realized that actively being in the maze, purposefully hunting for new cheese, was much better than staying in the cheeseless situation at Cheese Station C. He was taking control of his destiny rather than passively waiting for the impossible. This period in the maze taught him an invaluable lesson for continuous vigilance. To smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old. A vital insight for continuous monitoring and proactive anticipation of change. He recognized with a clarity that stung that the old cheese hadn't just suddenly disappeared. It had been gradually dwindling and even molding for quite some time, which he hadn't noticed due to his profound comfort and complacency.
That's such a simple but powerful observation, isn't it? The insidious nature of comfort. He had been so deeply comfortable, so secure in his routine that he simply hadn't noticed the old cheese getting smaller and even developing mold. His comfort had effectively blinded him to the decay happening right in front of him, to the subtle but significant shifts that signaled impending loss. It's a powerful metaphor for our own lives, where we often ignore the red flags until it's too late.
And this truly raises an important question for your own life right now. Are you actively monitoring the cheese in your life? Whether it's your job satisfaction, the health and vitality of your relationships, your physical well-being, your financial stability, or even the relevance of your skills. For those subtle signs of decay, depletion, or impending change. Ignoring these early, quiet warnings, often due to our own comfort or denial, can lead to much larger, more painful shocks and disruptions later on, just as it did for Haw. His journey in the maze also solidified another crucial lesson. Movement in a new direction helps you find new cheese. Inaction guarantees stagnation and a continued lack of what you need. Movement, even if uncertain or difficult at first, fundamentally opens up new possibilities and new paths to fulfillment. It's the critical difference between being stuck and being in motion.
As Haw journeyed deeper into the maze, he began to write profound sayings on the walls, a sort of breadcrumb trail of hard-won wisdom for him, should he ever follow, and powerful, self-affirming reminders for himself. These pieces of handwriting on the wall are truly the core practical takeaways from his challenging but ultimately transformative journey. They are his distilled insights, born of experience.
What's truly fascinating here is how Haw not only learned these lessons, but actively codified his learning, turning his experiences into universal principles. He realized and etched for others to see. The faster you let go of old cheese, the sooner you find new cheese. This highlights the crucial importance of psychological agility and emotional release. Clinging to the past only prolongs the suffering. He understood with chilling clarity that the fear he had allowed to build up in his mind was almost always worse, more debilitating, more terrifying than the actual situation itself. His insights deepened further, leading him to believe that old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese, which is a fundamental truth about adapting to change. Your mindset, your cognitive framework must evolve alongside your circumstances. And critically, he realized that when you see that changing can lead to something better, you change. This speaks to the immense power of a compelling, positive future vision to overcome inertia.
And perhaps most profoundly, the ultimate truth he recognized was that the biggest inhibitor to change lies within yourself, and that nothing gets better until you change. That's a monumental shift, isn't it? From blaming external factors who moved my cheese, to taking ultimate personal accountability for your own destiny.
It truly is. It's the moment of full ownership. Eventually, after much perseverance, after many false starts and moments of doubt, Haw found Cheese Station N. It was overflowing not just with cheese, but with new, and, to his delight, unfamiliar cheeses. To his immense relief, Sniff and Scurry were already there, well-fed and thriving, having reaped the rewards of their proactive movement and instinctive agility. Haw, having learned his lessons the hard way, quickly adapted to this new environment and, notably, secured his running shoes around his neck again, a powerful symbol of sustained vigilance and a commitment to never again fall into complacency.
He made a spontaneous, joyful toast. Hooray for change! As he savored the new cheese, reflecting on his arduous journey, he realized that this entire difficult and initially traumatic change had actually been a blessing in disguise, not only leading him to better, more varied cheese, but also revealing a stronger, more resilient, and ultimately a better part of himself. He had grown through the challenge.
This serves as a critical practical application for all of us. True adaptation isn't just about passively reacting to change, it's about learning to embrace and even actively enjoy the adventure of discovering what's next. Haw understood that you need to cultivate an ongoing readiness to be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again. This isn't a one-time adaptation, but a continuous, joyful process of evolving and discovering.
And even after finding abundant new cheese, Ha demonstrated his profound learning by not falling back into complacency. He meticulously continued to inspect Cheese Station N daily, and crucially, he continued to explore new areas of the maze, always seeking new information and staying aware of potential future shifts. This proactive exploration was absolutely key to avoiding being surprised again, to cultivating an ongoing state of readiness.
This dedication to continuous vigilance raises an incredibly important question for your own life. How can you consciously build continuous awareness, proactive exploration, and adaptability into your routine, even when things are going exceptionally well? It's far safer to be aware of your real choices than to isolate yourself in your comfort zone. This proactive approach, rather than a purely reactive one, is what truly sets you up for long-term success and sustained well-being in a world that is inherently and constantly in flux. It's about cultivating foresight, not just hindsight.
Okay, now for part 5. The reunion discussion, real-world applications. Michael, the storyteller within the book's narrative who introduces this parable, later gathered with his former high school classmates for a candid reunion dinner. This final section of the book is where the story truly comes alive, moving beyond the allegorical to offer practical, real-world examples and profound self-reflection from individuals wrestling with similar changes.
The first exercise they engaged in, suggested by Michael, was powerfully insightful and immediately applicable. Who were you in the story? Sniff, scurry, hem, or haw? Carlos, one of the classmates, immediately admitted to seeing himself as hem after an unexpected job loss. He confessed to feeling an overwhelming unwillingness to deal with the change. He simply didn't want to see it coming, let alone confront it. Frank shared a poignant story of a friend who, much like him, was utterly surprised when his department was closed, precisely because he had steadfastly refused to acknowledge the clear warning signs of impending change. He'd built an entire edifice of denial around himself.
Jessica, another astute classmate, made a universal observation that cuts through all the specific scenarios. Change happens to all of us, she noted, regardless of our job or our personal life. It's an inescapable reality. Nathan then shared a particularly poignant example of how his family's long-established chain of stores became obsolete, effectively dying because they are operating exactly like him. They ignored the looming, undeniable threat of mega-store competition. They stayed put, clung to their old model, refused to change, and consequently found themselves in deep, irreversible trouble.
This collective reflection raises an important question for you, the listener. How adept are you at identifying those hem tendencies, that stubborn resistance, that outright denial of obvious shifts, both within yourself and in those around you? And what are the very real, tangible consequences, personally, professionally, and relationally, of ignoring those powerful but ultimately self-defeating tendencies? The group discussion powerfully highlighted denial as a common, initial, and often profoundly destructive response to change. It's a cognitive bias where we refuse to accept a reality that challenges our comfort or pre-existing beliefs.
Jessica brought up another compelling example from her own professional life. Her company, a publishing house, failed spectacularly to adapt when a forward-thinking individual suggested they put their entire encyclopedia on a single computer disk, selling it for a fraction of the cost of their physical books. They clung stubbornly, almost religiously, to their old established Salesforce model, which relied on expensive door-to-door sales and high commissions from physical books. This was a classic case of the arrogance of success, a failure to innovate precisely because they had been so successful in the past, blinding them to an emerging technology, ultimately leading to rapidly falling sales and inevitable job losses for many.
This tragic yet common scenario raises another crucial question for you. Where in your own professional life might you be clinging to old cheese, outdated methods, legacy products, or even ingrained mental models that are subtly but surely rotting, losing their relevance, or diminishing in value? Nathan, reflecting on his own family's business failure, wisely suggested, maybe we should move our own chase, implying the profound wisdom of proactive self-initiated change rather than simply reacting to an external crisis once it's already too late. He recognized that it's far, far better to initiate change while you still possess agency and choice, rather than being forced to react to it when it's an absolute necessity and your options have drastically narrowed. This is about strategic foresight versus crisis management.
Richard, who had been initially skeptical of the whole parable, surprisingly began to truly grasp the power of Ha's journey. He started to understand the concept of seeing new cheese and imagining yourself enjoying it, recognizing how that powerful visualization could lighten the often heavy burden of change. He had an aha moment about his own situation, realizing his manager was implicitly telling him to change, not just the team. He began to apply the concepts not just to work, but to his personal life, candidly seeing his children as hem-like and their often fierce resistance to various family changes.
This realization highlights a crucial practical application for all of us: the transformative power of painting a compelling, vivid vision of the future, the new cheese, not just for yourself, but effectively for others, especially those who are resistant to change. A clear, appealing vision can often overcome fear and inertia, motivating action where logical arguments might fail. It's about showing people what they stand to gain, not just what they might lose. Richard's realization about his children is a perfect example of how these insights transcend the workplace and apply universally to human behavior.
The discussion among the classmates then moved beyond just jobs and careers, delving into the even more intimate realm of relationships. Jessica candidly considered her relationship as old cheese that had developed some pretty serious mold on it. Corey agreed, contemplating what he described as a bad relationship.
But Angela, one of the classmates, offered a truly profound reframe that shifted the entire group's perspective, and it's a vital insight for you. She suggested, or perhaps the old cheese is just old behavior. What we really need to let go of is the behavior that is the cause of our bad relationships, and then move on to a better way of thinking and acting. Corey, initially surprised by the depth of this, reacted with an audible ouch, but quickly recognized the immense power of this insight, concluding the new cheese is a new relationship with the same person. This is a paradigm shift, recognizing that the cheese can be internal, not just external.
Richard, now fully engaged and genuinely invested, wholeheartedly agreed, noting, repeating the same behavior will just get you the same results. He immediately applied this wisdom back to his work, suggesting that perhaps changing how he does his job, his approach, his processes, his mindset, rather than desperately seeking an entirely new job, could lead to far better outcomes within his current role. It's about renovating your current cheese station, not abandoning it entirely.
This entire exchange raises a profoundly important question for you, our listener. Where might old cheese in your life simply be an old behavior or a limiting mindset that, if challenged and consciously changed, could lead to a new cheese experience within your current circumstances? This is a powerful shift from external dependency waiting for external change to happen or perpetually blaming external factors to internal agency, where you realize you possess the profound power to transform your experience by fundamentally changing your own thinking and actions. It moves you from a passive recipient of change to an active architect of your own reality.
Michael then explained how he profoundly applied the story's lessons in his own company, shifting his role from simply managing daily problems to truly leading through change. He didn't just tell people what to do, he actively painted a compelling, attractive picture of new cheese, a new corporate vision and direction that everyone genuinely wanted to pursue. This made the arduous journey of change something to anticipate with excitement rather than dread with fear. He understood the power of vision to pull people forward.
He approached each character type differently within his organization, demonstrating nuanced leadership. The sniffs were encouraged to update the corporate vision, leveraging their innate ability to sniff out market changes and future trends. The scurries were empowered to take immediate action on this new vision with appropriate monitoring and support. The hems, initially resistant and fearful, were shown clear advantages and increased security that would result from changing, which helped to gradually turn many of them into haws. He sadly but realistically noted that some hems who utterly refused to change, who remained rigidly stuck in denial, ultimately had to be let go. This demonstrates the hard, often painful realities of effective change management in a competitive environment. While empathy is crucial, ultimately an organization must adapt to survive, and sometimes not everyone can or will make that journey.
Crucially, the story provided a language that was fun for us to use to talk about how we were dealing with change. This simple, shared vocabulary, full of relatable allegories, spread deeper into the company, which was absolutely vital for helping those with less power, who were often most afraid of imposed change. It gave them a framework and a voice.
This practical success raises an important question for you. How can you introduce a common language or framework for discussing change within your own team, your family, or your community? Creating a shared understanding, a common lexicon, can fundamentally transform resistance into collaboration. Michael's observation that a change imposed is a change opposed is a critical practical lesson in achieving genuine buy-in and fostering collaborative adaptation, rather than encountering a formidable brick wall of opposition. It highlights the human need for agency and understanding.
Michael also noted a fascinating, almost surprising shift in peer pressure dynamics within his company after the story circulated. Before, people would instinctively say that any proposed change was a bad idea, just to fit in, to align with the default culture of resistance. It was the easy, accepted path.
But after the story, something profound happened.
Well,
No one wanted to look like him. The narrative, so simple yet so powerful, had shifted the social norm. Instead, the new desirable trait became wanting to sniff out the changes ahead of time and scurry into action rather than get hemmed in and be left behind. This is a profound practical application. Simple, relatable stories, particularly those that offer clear archetypes, can effectively shift social norms and strongly encourage positive, proactive behaviors within a group, making adaptability not just a desirable trait, but a source of social capital and respect.
it even led to new business by completely reframing their company's value proposition. They started suggesting to potential partners that they, Michael's company, could be their new cheese, a better, more adaptable, and more successful partner for navigating the changing landscape. That's taking the core lesson of internal change and applying it externally in a truly innovative and strategic way.
Indeed. It demonstrates that the profound insights distilled from Who Moved My Cheese are not just for internal reflection and personal growth, but can become incredibly powerful tools for external strategy, competitive advantage, and even the creation of entirely new opportunities. It's about seeing change not as an enemy, but as a gateway.
So what does this entire deep dive mean for you, our listener? We've journeyed through a deceptively simple parable, exploring how it offers profound, practical lessons on navigating the inevitable currents of change. We've seen the importance of anticipating it, adapting quickly when it arrives, courageously letting go of old fears and outdated beliefs, visualizing new and better possibilities, and ultimately finding not just acceptance, but genuine joy and profound growth in the adventure of change itself.
The core insights from Ha's handwriting on the wall truly serve as your practical, actionable guide for navigating your own unique maze. They are distilled wisdom. Change happens. So, anticipate change. Make it a habit to monitor change constantly, then adapt to change quickly. Don't resist, simply change. Strive to actively enjoy change, and critically, always be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again. And remember the most potent truth Ha discovered. The biggest inhibitor to change lies within yourself, and that nothing gets better until you change. These aren't just clever sayings. They are a clear, concise roadmap for navigating your own maze with significantly greater success and, crucially, far less stress.
As you reflect on this deep dive into Who Moved My Cheese, take a moment to consider this provocative thought. What's your cheese station C, that comfortable place, that deeply ingrained habit, that long-held belief, or even that stagnant relationship that might be silently losing its cheese, or perhaps even growing moldy without you fully realizing it? What's the comfort you might be clinging to that is actually holding you back?
And following that powerful reflection, this raises an even more important, and perhaps challenging question for you to ponder as we conclude. What single old belief about change are you ready to courageously challenge today, right now? And what specific new cheese adventure, a new skill, a new approach, a new perspective, a new goal will you begin to envision and take the first brave, even if small, step towards, starting right now? Even if it's just a subtle shift in your own thinking or behavior, that first step into the maze can lead to profound transformation.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.